in this video, we're gonna talk a little bit about like double bubble versus brawl, sort of like where to play it and like sort of how it works in neutrals and sort of like going into like mid fights as well. So I swear every single time. Double bubble versus brawl. Okay. So I think one of the biggest issues, right, is a lot of people are playing double bubble on like a lot of maps, and I think the biggest thing is sort of understanding where it's good, right? Like a lot of the meta right now is devolving into these three things. It's devolving into essentially Brawl in certain places, Winston in certain places, and in my opinion, where Winston is like bad or it's like hard, right? People are running like Ball instead. Where it's bad or hard, they're running Ball instead. So it's sort of these three compositions, right? And you're gonna see like teams that are sort of like, like London, who's like really good at Brawl and like wants to play Brawl. Same thing with Paris, like they just want a hard run Brawl. You'll see other teams maybe just hard run Ball comp, right? It'll sort of depend on the team you're on, like what plays for your hero pool and plays for your team play style and all that stuff. But in general, like map wise, right? Like each map is gonna have sort of like a combat like is technically better, right? But then the question is, does it fit your team? Okay. So let's sort of go down here. So what I want to talk about first, right, is I want to talk about like where do you sort of play like Winston over Ball, and this is my opinion, and I'll give you obviously the logic behind it. So I'm gonna give you just some maps. Okay, I'm not gonna include Koth. I'm gonna talk about like 2CP and like payload maps. So I think some of the maps where Winston is very good is Temple, on defense and attack, right? I think it sort of does suck on second point though. Well, again, I'll use examples to talk about everything. I think Dorado, another map where, on defense and even attack, I think it's quite good. It sucks on third point though, right? First and second, very good. I think Watch Point, it's very good again on defense and attack. I think where it'll struggle a little bit is third, but I don't think it's actually bad there. It'll just struggle. Like if your macro is not very good and like your understanding of how to take space and rotate, it'll be a little difficult. Numbani, I think again it's very good on Numbani on defense and attack, and primarily on it's good on first and second, but third is going to be a bit more difficult. I'm going to keep going with the list. Sorry, Hollywood, and I'll give you the logic in a second. Hollywood, right? I think it's very good on defense. Yeah, maybe defense. That's a little debatable, actually. I think it's good on attack for sure. Defense, I think it might be a bit rough, right? Third, again, it's going to be really rough. And then I'm not going into Koths, okay? So let me sort of talk about like what do you need on attack? What do you need on defense? Let me give examples and sort of like briefly talk about this. I'm going to try and keep this video very short and to the point so it's easy to understand, okay? So when you're on attack, okay, and right now, remember, we're focusing sort of on like, versus Brawl, okay? Remember, playing double bubble versus Brawl. So when you're playing versus Brawl, right, in a neutral setting, you're not gonna, in a neutral setting, you don't have ultimates, so you're not gonna necessarily out Brawl them, right? So a very simple thing you can do is you can look to swap if you want to make your life like a lot easier, right? You can essentially look to do, you can swap, right, and you can go more spammy. Because you know that you're not going to win the Brawl, so why try and play the Brawl versus them? Why not just play the spam, right? And if you're going with spam and you're going into Brawl, another thing to really, get value out is try and get value out of angles, right? And if we're swapping, some of the really good swaps are just straight out of the bat, right? Echo, getting an Echo, right? Getting maybe an Ashe, right? Echo Mercy is an option. You don't even necessarily need a Mercy, but you can still run a Brig, right? You could be really greedy and run an Ana Zen. I saw a team doing that, and like that can work. It can work, definitely. Especially if enemy team's on Brawl and you're putting your Ana Zen really far away. Because they're not diving your backline, right? They're just going to rush on it, but that's fine because as long as they're in Narnia. So Echo, with a Mercy or Brig, Ashe, right? Really strong. So like in total, it'll look something like this. It'll look like Winston, Diva, Tracer here would normally go here. Maybe Ashe or McCree would go here. I also think McCree is like much better than Ashe. Ashe is much better than McCree on like almost all maps because like most payload maps are like very long. If it's like a closed map like a Koth, then yeah, you're gonna run McCree. But in most situations, Ashe is gonna be better because Ashe is like a mid to long range hero, right? And then Ana. So the swaps, right, like really fast would be something like, you know, why am I putting Diva here? Whoops, that should be a Zarya. Fake Zarya, right? And so the swaps would be, you know, maybe you keep the Tracer, right, and then you get like an Echo here, right? Or maybe you know, instead of the Tracer, you get an Echo, and then you run Echo Ashe, right? And then you can run like Brigana. You could like even run a Mercy here, right? Like Mercy Ana. If you're gonna run Mercy, don't run Mercy Zen. And or you could run like this Zen Ana, you know, Ashe Echo. The biggest thing I'm gonna say is when you start doing these swaps, don't go more than 2 or 3 swaps, because once you start swapping too much, right, it gets a little bit ugly. I'm not going too much into the swaps and like adapting, right? But try and do around 2 or 3 so you're conserving alt economy, and if you need to swap later as well. Okay. So those are sort of the swaps, right? And now let me talk about the maps, like sort of the map geometry, right? That's sort of how you swap and you get more spammy. Now the angles concept, right? And we're talking about attack. So let me sort of talk about like how angles work on attack. Let me give you like actually, let me open up some examples. And a lot of this is being creative and being smart, right? And a lot of it puts pressure on your Winston to sort of understand how to set up, right? And how to like, you know, play with his backline so his backline sort of like can get value. Here we go. So we'll look at like Temple. I think you guys have seen really fast. I'm gonna give like a really fast example and go on to something else. If you watch my basic video, I talk a lot about how to attack Temple on first point. So I'm not gonna talk about it too much, right? But I just want to talk about the concept of angles, right? Really fast. So if you're attacking, right, you can send your core or your backline over here. Your Winston can maybe hide, right? Your Winston can jump. Maybe your Tracer, if you have one, can come over here. If you have an Echo, it can come over here, right? You can get angles. Very, very clean and simple. Okay. Next one. Let's look at another one, right? I'll focus on attack right now. Dorado. Okay, we're looking at Dorado Attack. So how do we get angles on Dorado Attack now? Oh, interesting. Can I delete that? Oh, I can't. Oh, that's, I think, a new feature. That is cool. Okay. Makes my life a lot easier. Okay, so here, right? Like in angles, right? In general, if you think about it, the enemy team is going to be postured up over here, right? And they're going to be trying to fight for this angle so they can sort of, you know, have angles on you. Or if they're playing Brawl, right, you know, they might actually be looking to spawn hold and like hold over here, right? In which case, if they're holding here, just get angles. So like common sense, you can get like an Fair or Echo. It's the wrong color. And you can sort of, you know, have someone come over here, start shooting here, have someone force cart and force them to move out. As soon as they move out, get someone over here, right, and just take angles on them, right? So if they're playing Brawl, like essentially the concept is sort of like take space and just get behind him. Get behind him 360. Like send an Echo behind, right? Send your Tracer behind. Have your Zarya Ana hold one angle. Have your Echo Mercy or Echo hold another angle within your Brig LOS if you have a Brig or Mercy. Have your Tracer hold another angle, and then have your Winston hold another angle too, right? And your Winston only comes out when the enemy team pushes out. The Winston's chilling up here, right? The enemy team pushes out, Winston then drops and does something, and Winston's not doing anything. He could cleave if he really wants to, right? But then he's got to realize he's probably gonna have to like walk out and live and then come back in later. Okay, he can't take too much damage. He can't be forced to jump early because then he's sort of in trouble. Because any team pushes, he doesn't have jump, he just dies. Okay, so sort of understanding how to play angles here, right? If you look at second point, it's actually if it can be difficult, but it can also be really strong, right, on attack, because if you're able to sort of set up and you're sort of able to put someone over here, right, enemy teams walking forward, right, it's very difficult for them to do anything. The biggest thing is setting up and getting those angles right off the bat. So if the enemy team says, oh, you know what, we can't do this, and they come rushing up here, right, then what happens is, you know, these guys kite a bit, these guys push more aggressive and shoot them. And then what's even better, maybe you kite into like these guys LOS, so maybe you kite actually, maybe you drop here actually, right? And you like these people are maybe people who are mobile, like, you know, or something, or maybe they're just a Zarya Ana and they're kiting. And maybe you drop, yeah, you can drop over here as long as you do it really early and you start moving really fast, preferably when the enemy team's over here. That way the enemy team has to drop like in this instead of doing that. And the reason why that's a problem is because in here, right, these guys can't shoot in there because of LOS issues. So, but yeah, sort of like abusing angles, right, and sort of getting value off that. The biggest thing you have to always care, right, when you're playing double bubble on attack in a brawl, right, is getting choked out and spawn held. In all honesty, like second point, like you can 100% get spawn held here. There's like a door here and like a door here, right? I think there might be one more maybe further back. I think it's these two, I believe. I think there might be one more, but yeah, essentially, if you're trying to get out here, right, and that team is made, you're just gonna get walled off, right? So it's really important you get like whenever you're stuck in chokes, right, you need to immediately get flankers. people who can sort of get behind them, right? Like Tracer, you know, Echo to some extent, you know, it's a bit slower, Sombra a bit slow, right? If you're really, really stuck, you can 100% get a ball instead of Winston. But that point, you're probably just gonna switch to ball comp. But it's just a matter of like making sure you get those angles right off the bat and pinching them. Like I'll give you an example of Numbani, which is like very easy actually. It's even an easier example. Where Numbani, you get the angles straight off the bat. If the enemy team is holding like, you know, over here, right, you can literally send someone up here, push like that, some people over there, you can send people under and then come up top, right? So you can get angles and like soft pressure them while like maybe someone else goes pressure's point, right? And you can pinch them. If they're not holding there, maybe they're holding somewhere else, right? Then you can take free space and then again take angles. So the whole concept is just try and surround them and try and pressure them. And then while you're doing that, right, obviously you can play for nano, right? Like you can pressure them and do a lot of damage, but you can just live. As long as the biggest thing you have to realize, right, is you need to live. You should not be dying. If you're dying, there's a problem. You need to be living. So you need to be using your CDs really smart as like your mobile heroes. So you're not like, if they push you, you can just use your mobility CD and get out. And while you're applying pressure to them, right, you're building nano, and then maybe in the mid fight, you can hard commit with ultimates if you need to, right? Sometimes the pressure will result in kills, right? As you know, sometimes spam, right, results in just straight up kills. And then just play a bit slow, understand who you killed. Hey, we killed their BAP, right? They're low heals. Keep spamming. Any damage is good now. Hey, we killed their Ryan, or like they have no shield now. This is great, right? We can maybe like, you know, force them to move, like, because they have no shield, right? So understand who you killed and how that like affects your team and how it like helps you guys. And you can use that, right? Don't just int in after you get a kill, because then they can maybe trade you and then it's, you know, awful. Just because you get 1 or 2 kills doesn't mean it's 1, okay? But again, understand that you need to live. Okay, so let's go back to the whiteboard. So we sort of talked about like attack, right? Like watch point, I'm not gonna go too much. It's sort of no brainer, right? Hollywood again, attack. The way I like to look at it is your Winston can like jump up, right, and force people out to sort of allow your backline to sort of take space. Is the way I look at it. And also it's a very good map where you can sort of like play for ultimates. You can play for nano. You know, your Echo Tracer can go take angles if needed, and it should work pretty well. So defense, right? So defense is a bit more not necessarily difficult. It's just a different way to think, right? And the way I always think about defense is, especially on neutral, is I always think of like cleave spots. How many cleave spots can you get, right? And I'll give you an example of Temple, and I'll give you an example of like another map as well. Temple, I think, is one of the easiest ways to look at it. But you want cleave spots, and you want to be able to live. You want a combination of both of these, right? And then you want to be able to live, right, till like maybe you get a kill, right? Or maybe you have an ultimate. And if you can like do both of those right together, then you end up getting a lot of value. And like maps that'll allow you to do that, right? For example, we'll use just straight up Numbani as an example because it's already open. On defense, it's one of the strongest. Why? Because wherever the enemy team goes, you'll have at least 2 cleave spots. So if the enemy team goes high ground, right, you'll have a cleave spot over here, right? And then if they drop, right, you'll probably have another cleave spot on point. So that's 2 spots at least. That's 2. That's like 2 times you can cleave, right? You'll cleave up first up here. If they drop, then right, then maybe like after that you'll chill for a second. You'll chill down here, then you'll push into them, right? And they won't drop instantly because they're under pressure from when you jumping forward. They won't have the resources to, so they'll probably most likely, you know, do this and come over here and stabilize on this corner. They won't just go in the open space. If they decide to, you know, go over here and come over here, right, and play this corner, well, then you'll cleave on this corner, right? And then that's like first one, right? Then from there, they might go more aggressive. They might make a rotation and try and flip the map, like come into here and like do something like that, in which you'll get a cleave spot over there or over there, depending on where they go, right? If they force point, right, then that's fine. If they force point, and one of the biggest things to understand is if they force point early, right, and they haven't cleared the map, the reason why this is strong is because you have angles, right? So if the whole enemy team decides to go to point here, right, well, you have this entire map still, and you can even send people maybe and get some more space on this side too, and then you can just take angles on them, and it's less about cleaving, right? And then it's like, okay, now we just need to buy time, right? So if they force point, right, and you only maybe got like 1 cleave spot, maybe like up top here because they dropped really early for some reason, right? Then it's all about, okay, let's buy as much time as we can. So we need to sort of like sort of a with D.Va you'd call it like tank rotate. I don't have a great word for it, but you sort of need to like bounce off point, right? So if you have a tracer, right, Winston and Tracer Winston would touch first, right, then jump out. The Tracer would touch and stall point, then Tracer would get out, and you sort of just buy time like that, right? And while your Ashe is dishing damage, your Echo is dishing damage, while other people are sort of just dishing damage, and that's why I always say that it's a bit risky, right, to run Echo, Ashe, because then you have a little less people who can sort of like juggle point, right? Having Tracer is really nice because you can juggle point with Winston. Plus, you always have someone who's mobile who can constantly like reposition, right? Like for example, if your team is set up, and most of you, let's say your Zarya Ana is over here, right? And then maybe like your Ashe is over here, and the enemy team rotates in. They go over here, right at the start, and then they go here. So your Winston now is forced to play maybe up here, right? And then you want your Tracer to get another angle, right? Because your Tracer can do it. Your Tracer can maybe poke from here or poke from here, right? And get a completely different angle, which is like super strong, right? And here you can maybe run a Mercy for sure. So that allows the mobility and the angles that your Tracer gives is like super, 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 super good. And it makes it very hard for the Reinhardt because the Reinhardt can only shield, one angle, right? Or one place. So if you've got someone else who's able to poke in a different position, it makes it difficult. Okay. What's another map I could quickly show? I'm not gonna go. I can go into Temple really fast. I think I've showed it. I've showed it in my basic VOD. I'd suggest go watching that. I'm not gonna show it again. It was in my Meta Talk VOD, I think, and that's like why I said it's strong. Dorado, I think, is another great example. I don't know if it's actually still up. Is it up? No, it's not. Dorado on defense, it's really strong because you can abuse high grounds again. And now what you're starting to notice, right, is when you're on defense, right, if you're able to sort of abuse high grounds, it makes it very, very, very hard for the enemy team to do anything, right? Like you'll go get a cleave spot, one over here, right? You might get another one over here if they go here or over here. That's at least two. At least. You should probably get more as well. And again, you can trade people off card as well, right? And again, you're just buying time to get kills, right? To get spams and hopefully force CDs and get a kill, or build an ultimate, right? And I didn't get to talk too much about mid fights. I'll talk about it a little bit right now, where essentially in mid fights, okay, if you have advantages, right, it's really important that your backline starts playing aggressive. So your Zarya, Brig, Ana, particularly these two, they need to start brawling. And one of the biggest things, and maybe things that people don't really know, is that in mid fight, your Zarya shouldn't bubble Winston anymore, right? Your Zarya should 100% bubble Brig, right? So what I mean by that is, like, let's say the enemy team is rotating, high ground. It's a very common thing and what, logically people should do. Like there's one or two people pushing cart, normally a Tracer, okay? Tracer on cart. And then the rest of the team is going high ground. So what should happen here is, where's this? There we go. So what should happen here is your Winston should say, okay, cool, they're going high ground, right? We need to look to like hit them, right? This is my X2, right? So I need to look to hit that. And this time I want my Zarya to push with me. And you're gonna pinch, right? Hopefully all of you should know what pinching is. You've watched videos before. So Winston looks to jump up here, right? The Zarya then looks to push in. Zarya, Brig, and then maybe you've got a Kree or an Ashe, preferably Ashe, I'd hope, and Ashe maybe just taking on a little off angle over here, right? So your Zarya, Brig looks to push in, and when this happens this time, right, either initial engage, right, your Winston's gonna get bubbled. Why? Because he's gonna take the burst of damage. It's the start of the fight, right? But then let's say you have to back up, you have to like live, right? So your Zarya, Brig backs up a little bit, okay, and then your Winston sort of drops and is getting like Ana healed, right? Your Ana's over here. And so now it looks like something where your Zarya was up, but now your Zarya Brig's over here. Your Brig Zarya, right? And you're sort of just in this poke phase, and it's like, okay, what do we want to do now, right? Well, now in this situation, right, your Zarya should be high charge, your Ashe should be dishing damage, the enemy team is sort of just standing there, right? You can go in again if you want, right? Like keep going, like keep cycling. Don't just stand there with like your hands up saying, oh, we did it once, we didn't get any value. Okay, cool, yeah, great. Go in again, right? But this time, right, in this mid fight, right, when you push, right, because they're probably in open space, or they should be in open space, right? Your Winston could jump in and get bubbled, or what you could do is you could push forward, right? And you could bubble Brig, right? If you think your Winston doesn't need it. And that'll allow your Brig to be super aggressive. And like, that's really scary for an enemy team. Like I can't tell you, like versus like any tanks, like a brig in their face, just like stunning and swinging is like very annoying, right? And that'll allow you to get a lot of value. So just understanding this mid fight, right? When you think you have an advantage or you forced enough CDs, because this first engage, right? If your Winston jumps correctly, if your Winston jumps on a McCree or jumps on a BAP, right? If you jump on a BAP, with plus your damage, you'll probably force lamp, right? Then maybe you need to back up. Cool, they have the lamp. Let's go in again. You go in again, right? They have the lamp. You have an advantage, right? So sort of like by jumping in on certain people, forcing CDs, getting value out, you jump in maybe on like the McCree, right? Maybe force the Zarya to bubble or the lamp again, or maybe you kill the Cree, right? Like if you jump on the correct person, force CDs off that person, you're gonna get value. Maybe first stun off the Cree, right? So it just depends who you sort of commit on, but based off that, maybe you get some value. Maybe you jump on the Mei and they force cryo, or you force like the Mei wall, which is huge. Why? Because now like if the Mei can't wall your team when they push through here, right? So jumping Mei can work as well. So it just depends, who you're jumping on and what you force. But then based off that in the mid fight, you can push back in and sort of use that as leverage. And while it's happening, right? Again, I'm gonna keep pointing out you have an Ashe on just dishing damage. Okay, and that makes it really, really, really strong. Okay, so we sort of talked about this, right? And like, so now I want to talk about like why, these maps I think it's good, right? Hopefully what you're noticing is that on defense and attack, you're getting more of these attributes where it plays for the comp, right? Where on defense, you can play slower. You have multiple cleave spots. You've got high grounds. You can stabilize. You can back up if needed, right? But on some of the other maps, like for example, if we talk about like Eichenwald, like it's pretty rough. Like you could do it, right? But maybe you're gonna have to hold really close on the first point and play that high ground. And then when you back up, right, it's gonna be really awkward. Maybe you put your Winston like inside the tower and you try and like manage that, but it's still difficult. There's not many high grounds you can really utilize. So that X2, right, or like that second cleave spot is gonna be much harder to get value out of. And trying to only playing double bubble with one cleave spot is very difficult. Like for example, on Temple's second point, right? If we think about second point, I was talking to a Contenders player, Tree actually, if anyone knows him, very very mechanically skilled player and really flexible. He's on dark mode. So if you look at second point, you're logistically you get at least one, maybe two cleave spots depending on how they go, right? Because if the enemy team pushes like this, right here, great, you get two. You get X1 here, and you get another one like right over here, right? But if they go main like that, right, then unfortunately, what's going to happen is you're probably only really going to get one, like X1. If they go other side too, right? They go like over here. Whoops, this is gonna be rough. Here. Oh man, that sucks. Everything got shifted. If you go over here, right, and you sort of push like that, well, in that situation, right, you're maybe going to get one like, I think we're over here. You probably won't get another one over here. You may get one like again on like mid fight, right? But that's mid fight, and by then like a whole bunch of stuff's happened. So you sort of need to be careful and like understand, how to like get value on defense in this situation if you're going to run double bubble here. And what I'd say actually is go for harder engages on these cleave points. Maybe even get a Doomfist, so that when you on that cleave point, you're not actually like soft committing anymore. You're maybe being more aggressive and trying to get more picks. That way, or force more resources. So that way, going into the second cleave point, you get value. Because there's a lot of heroes, right, where like they get more value over time. Like for example, Ashe gets like a lot at the start of like a fight. Whoops. I like the start of the fight, you look at the timeline, like it's like a little bit, right? But as the fight goes on, he gets more and more value, right? But if you look at like Doomfist, right? It's a bit different where it's like, I don't know how to sort of draw this out, but it's like, like a lot of value, then like low value, a lot of value, low value, a lot of value, low value. Why? Because it's a cycle hero, right? You engage and you back, you have no CD, so you have no value. So it's like actually like that, I'd say. But yeah, hopefully that sort of makes sense, right? So like you can understand heroes that like will actually give you more highs, right, off the bat, and those will be the cleave spots. Like Echo, for example, is a hero that sort of like, if you were to draw that out again, it'd be something like, like not as high Doomfist, but like somewhere like there maybe. And then like, because the poke is really weak, so something like that, I'd probably say. Something like that, roughly. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm trying to think if there's any other topics I really want to talk about. This should hopefully give you the basics and sort of understanding what maps to sort of play it on, sort of what you're looking on for attack and how to sort of swap against Brawl, and sort of the angles, right? And then on defense, sort of how to approach it as well. I'm not going too much into detail into it right now, but I think this should give you a basic understanding, hopefully, one of the biggest things I will say, right, is you need to understand CDs, right? You need to understand what CDs you're looking to force, right? Like you can't just expect going in and just like killing everything unless you have ultimates, right? Like you need to understand that you want to try and force lamp. You want to try and, force like cryo if they have, a May. Like try and force certain CDs that gives your team an advantage. Maybe make the shield really low, right? So try and force CDs so that later in the fight you get more value and you're living. Again, live, play for alts. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you have questions, feel free to ask, and you can always DM me on Discord. I'm much are underrated. I appreciate that, Monkey King. Thank you, thank you. Mm. Thank you for the follow. ULRV. I enjoyed. Thanks, Obo. It was like pretty basic. I don't think it went as detailed as I wanted it to, because I think like a lot more detail is like the concept. Like I honestly, I need to have a VOD review about this. Like I need to talk about this. I legitimately think this is what I need to talk about. The problem with this concept of living, is like it's so micro based. It's so micro based on like how you use your CDs and how your awareness is. Right? Like this is sort of what it almost breaks down to. There's probably even more on that too, right? But like that is what I think so many people struggle with is this concept of living and understanding like when to live and when to be more aggressive, when to be more passive. Like when, should I take this aggro peak or should I not take this aggro peak? And I think that's something that, um makes things more difficult for people.